Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I would have the mental permission for myself to go and make something without uh, understanding it really physically and mentally what it is. And I don't think I even thought about making a film until later in the process because the initial idea was to go and volunteer and help on several missions. And I actually started on a boat called Minden. A group of medics from Berlin were organizing missions on the coast of Libya. And you know the situation where people try to cross to Europe from North Africa, and there are thousands of people drowning in the water. And you go with a small boat, and you're looking for people with binoculars in the middle of the sea, and you find suddenly a blip somewhere, and you rush towards it, and there's 150 people that are about to drown in the middle of nowhere. And by luck, you found them. And the boats from NATO are over there, not so far away, looking, not doing anything. And the Libyan Coast Guard, depending on what deal they have that week, are going to come and either chase you away or arrest you for human smuggling because you're inside their territorial waters. It's a really crazy, crazy situation. And that's not reported enough, really. And if you see stuff about it, it's very generalized politically, but you don't really understand the depth of this surreal other world on the water. So when I was there, I went there to help them to document their work and help them get funding. And I felt like I have, after a couple of missions, I felt like I have the permission to go and explore more. And a friend introduced me to somebody called Ahmed Khan, who was building a refugee camp in Greece, and it was supposed to be an example camp. And he said, "You have to come and check out what we're doing because it's very special." So I went there, and indeed, that was a very special camp. It had locks on they had doors. It was a building. People could be safe. Children had a place to play. There were yoga lessons for women, conflict resolution meetings. It was a safe, relatively the best in the worst condition. And obviously, very hard to sustain because the Greek government didn't want to send this type of message. Come over, it's going to be good. And I asked him, so how what's the situation in the other camps? And we used food and the abundance of supply that this camp had. And we went with a group of several people to other camps to deliver coats, shoes, blankets. And each time I would kind of disappear from behind and film and ask people what's going on. And the situation was insane. There were camps that, for example, one mayor surrounded the camp with the military. He put his 18-year-old daughter to run the camp that had no prior experience in managing a refugee camp, so he can steal half of the money for the food. And and they put Yazidis, which was a population that was completely genocided by Daesh, by Islamic State, on the top of Mount Olympus in the winter in tents instead of a building, freezing to death. And it's like every deployment was completely horrible. And you couldn't blame Greece because they had no resources. They were going through a crazy economic crisis. And so there was a mess of corruption and good intentions, but the lack of capability. And I asked all these friends, so what's the worst camp? And everybody said categorically, Xoftex. Xoftex with an S. Xoftex was an old, burnt out toilet paper factory that was in the wasteland, like a toxic wasteland, industrial wasteland, next to a crematorium. And and behind it was an industrial train yard where these long trains that go to through the Balkans to Europe. You can imagine what that creates. A whole entire smuggling operation. People from different countries would run gangs that would offer people tickets from to go below or all kinds of ways to get to Europe. They will come and have fights with people in the camp because and there will be people that go and sleep there trying to get to Europe, and the camp wouldn't feed them because they're not recognized by the asylum system. And there were many scandals, very horrible things happened. So I went there one night, and I saw a group of people smoking next to a hole in the fence. And I kind of mustered my courage, and I went and started speaking to them, and they were so nice. And I asked them, so what's the situation in the camp? What's going on? Is there anybody here that could help us organize some people and we can talk somewhere? And they said, yeah, there's a guy called Bajat. Bajat was a kid, like 18-year-old, that escaped Syria, that knew really perfect English and was translating everybody's problems to the Red Cross. You know, doctors go from door to door around the camp, and there's one guy that they take with them, and he translates everybody's problems to the doctors. So he knew everything about everybody in the camp. And I met him, and we went to have a coffee, we spoke, and he said, yeah, let's organize some people in the Red Cross tent at night. So I came there at night, and I asked people, do you have any ghost stories from Syria? And one person said, yeah, if I go to my grandmother's house in the middle of a field, no houses around, and I put my ear to the wall, you can hear 1,000 people screaming. And another person had another story, and another person had another story. And 20 minutes later, all of us are running together in the train yards at night, looking for a ghost, and I'm filming them. And we are making some kind of strange movie. And we run back to the tent, and we're all watching the footage. And they laugh, and we're having a great time, and they say, you have to come back. So I contacted an NGO, a small NGO that was working in the camp. The name of it was Intervolve. And there was an amazing woman from Lebanon that was basically doing all the social work in the camp. Her name was Lamia Karkour. And I showed her my work on the boats and my previous film and all kinds of things I've done. She said, yeah, you're very welcome. There's going to be a theater workshop from Italy. They're going to come for 1 week. Why don't you join them and see, maybe you can collaborate? And that's what I did. I joined the theater workshop, helped them with ideas, and then they left after a week, and I said, this has to continue. And in that workshop, I met Muhammad and Ali Abbas, two Palestinian brothers that wanted to make a zombie film in the camp. And this is how the whole thing began. And I spent a year, roughly a year in camps. And I spent many months, basically twice a week, going to all the caravans, gathering people, together with a friend, Nasos, that came from Athens. And we would go to a community center and do acting exercises. We translated some Hamlet into like a version in the camp. I spent most of 2016 and 17, a little bit of 18 in camps and on boats on the Mediterranean. But on and off, but I think roughly a year in the camp. And then I followed people to the countries also where they were sent. So I went to Sweden, to Marseille, which is a whole other story by itself. So this is part of the interesting part of the story. In the documentary, the brothers, in the research, they dreamed going to Sweden. Because Sweden is kind of sort of the wet dream, because it's they didn't know they're going to be sent to a small village in the middle of nowhere where nobody is going to interact with them. But their dream was Germany or Sweden. They didn't know they're going to go to Sweden. So I filmed a little bit about that in the camp. All right. Yeah. I mean, I try to extract everything from the documentary research. So I react to what I saw, and then it gives me the permission to take it to that direction, because there's several reasons. One, on one of those nights in the camp, I asked people, okay, let's do an exercise. You're gonna have an hour. You're gonna write a film trailer and perform it. And and suddenly one group made a gangster film, another group made a horror movie, another group made some kind of relationship drama, and time traveling relationship drama. And Ali and his brother, it's like everybody got, after that night, everybody got very excited. And they performed and they had so many ideas, so many genres. Because when you're in a camp, it's many genres. You're in some kind of a purgatory that you don't know what country you will go to, when will the phone call arrive, what language you have to learn. You don't know what country you will go. What will you have friends there? Will they embrace you? Will you get a job? You don't know what to prepare to. So you're constantly in this state of different genres. Your mind goes, and especially when you're young, and especially when you're oversaturated with, your own influence as a teenager, and you're ripped out of school, and you run away from a country at war. And you end up in a place that's a little bit like an open air prison, and all you have is fantasy. So it's a reaction to that. So that night, after the trailer exercise, we all went to Ali's caravan, and Ali started. I said, "So what do you really? What kind of movie would you make in the camp?" It's like, "Well, we should make a zombie film in the camp." I said, "Let's go. Tell me a little bit of a story." And and he started telling his friends in the caravan how he would make a zombie film, and I'll show you that in documentary form. But that's literally taken from the documentary research. That's why those two brothers are the first credit at the end of the film, because they're the inspiration of the movie. Abod, we call him Abod, Abodi, who plays the main character, and Osama plays his brother, Osama al-Hafiri. Um, Abod has never acted in a film, but he was living in a refugee camp in Berlin, a very tough area of Berlin, Marzahn, which is quite quite problematic area of Berlin, and and he wanted to be a rapper. So that's always a good sign. It's a good sign for several reasons, because also Hamisi from White Shadow wanted to be a rapper. That means they study text like this. You can give Abod 5 pages of text, he would read it once and remember it. He's just extremely intelligent and fast. And also the confidence and wanting to perform was there. So you see it immediately. We did a lot of casting, and we film, which is something that I feel is very healthy when you prepare. We try different characters in different places. You discover what you need through the process of casting. So by the time you've casted the film, you don't really think of people as non-professionals anymore. You just think about them as talented and present and capable and ready to work. And that idea is out the door, because now the commitment is there. And of course, a person that's never been in the film is going to go through a crisis, because the film is a long shoot. And at some point, they're always going to be like, wow, this is a long process. But I did not encounter any issues like this. The team was very committed to tell the story, and they felt like it's necessary to tell it that way. They all read the script. And I had a really beautiful group from Syria, Palestine, Morocco. There were crew members from Argentina, but it was a very diverse, very multinational team. I mean, in the camp, first of all, when I was there, majority of people you saw were young guys in their early 20s or late teens that escaping conscription. They didn't want to be part of the military. So there's like a high percentage of that. Also, women were mostly behind doors and were not very accessible to me, whether because it's very traditional or I would have had to spend a lot more time. So the women I did meet are represented in the film, and they're based on actual characters. And but I think it would be more honest to show what my experience was, rather than if I was a woman, I probably would have had access more to that part. That's what I could access in my research. And also, yeah, percentage-wise, I met more young men in the camps, which is not necessarily the only truth. There are families also, but they have a different process sometimes. Um, but there is a woman at the end. There's a couple of women, and there and there's one that has a really major part. We have plenty of examples from our past. We don't need to look only at the present. Were movies in the Second World War, in the occupation of Algiers, Bataille d'Alger, the Battle of Algiers, movies that made a difference, that told the story of occupation, colonialism, genocide. I mean, if anything, that's a medium that's very necessary to use, not only for that. I mean, you can tell it in many ways. You don't have to show the actual thing. You can tell it from a room. I mean, what other medium we have that's so immediately connectable for so many people? Yeah, there are, and I think there's also a resurgence in theater because of AI. There's this fear that AI will take over, so live shows are more precious. But you know, that's that's what I've been doing for many years in many different aspects, either helping friends in different ways, taking different parts in cinema. It's is a medium I love, and I think it could still expand and grow and evolve. And there's still a lot to find in it, especially if you don't try to make what you've seen. I didn't have a moment of questioning. I mean, I do once in a while. I say, okay, I have to give it up, and then it comes back naturally because dreams come and say, oh, this could be a nice scene. But it's always been something I want to do. I've been doing it since I was a child, and uh, and I've always felt like that's a way for me to communicate ideas and find people around the world, everywhere, beyond language, to share this sort of fantasy together. Yeah, I mean, I love Mexico, and uh, and I also love the idea of living on a planet because I think we need to all move to live on a planet instead of the imposed borders that were created. It sounds a bit idealistic, but I think it's more necessary than ever to evolve from the systems we have as a population because this genocide wouldn't be happening in Gaza if we evolved. Well, I find people here are very political, and the film played in Morelia, and I had engagement with audience in Q&A, so I felt very strongly that it's a good place to show the film. I felt the same with the previous film. I feel like people are very emotionally involved and they have a different taste of cinema here. They're very patient uh, and open to different types of cinema. It's part of the reason why I'm in Mexico because people here accept different forms of cinema and they're not, I think, inundated with the one format that comes from a very particular country. Uh, so um, I don't know, I can tell you, but I'm hopeful because I feel very connected to here. So I'm very excited to present it here. I'm really looking forward to it.